Hi everyone, it's Tom Stanley again, and we are now back from getting tires fitted to the Juke. It looks so much better now, I have to say, with those wheel wells filled out. That looks just great. I went for a 235/65/17, which is a 29-inch outer diameter on the tire. By anything that I've read so far, 28.5 is the largest you can go without modifications. And I would say that's correct. We'll get to that in just a moment. I'll show you some of the details on where there are some issues. But nonetheless, let's take a spin around with the camera and look at how the stance has changed and how the appearance of the Juke has changed with these nice sized tires on here. So here we are coming from the other side, and we can get quite a decent look at it. Bring the camera down a little lower maybe to get a better view of the difference between the front and the rear. The rear lift, I would say, could be about 5 mil lower, and the front lift could be about 5 mil higher, just for stance. But I'm still thinking that those spring spacers on the rear are going to settle in to their mount. So the jury's out on whether that's actually the case or not. But we'll see. Now, if you look at the front, you can immediately see there's an issue. This is so tight in here. Now I can't even get my fingers in there. However, one thing I noticed last night is that this panel is seriously floppy. The way it's mounted, you can pull another 10 millimeters of clearance in here just by altering the mount on the panel. So that's going to be one of the projects coming up, is to see what I can do with that panel mount. Other than that, there is some rubbing inside the fender well, and given that those fender wells are plastic, I think a heat gun will do the trick there. And then finally around the back, we're pretty good here. We got about 15 mil of clearance, and we got about 20 mil of clearance on the back. Given that the tire just rides up and down, it's not doing any steering, there shouldn't be any troubles there. So I think the back is fine as it is. However, remember the shock absorber concern that I had. It's not really an issue. I've had it out on some bumpy, dusty, shingle, gravelly roads and no troubles at all. However, I am going to take one of the other washers that came with these replacement shocks, and I'm going to stack it under this washer. It buys you maybe 2.5 millimeters of additional down travel. And perhaps I can even get another one and put 2 in there, maybe buy 5 mil of down travel. But that's going to be one of the amendments that are being made. And then the final is up underneath. If we get in over the top, lighting in here is pretty terrible, but there we go. You can see here this plate where the spring mounts for the McPherson strut has about 3 millimeters of clearance over the tire. Now fortunately this goes in quite a distance. We've got about 20 millimeters in here. I can almost get 2 fingers in there. So there's a large flat area in here. So I think this can just be nudged up, maybe with a pry bar or something quite simple, just to buy a little bit more clearance. However, it's not really a concern because that plate is mounted to the assembly. This is the part of the McPherson strut assembly that moves, not the bit down here. So realistically, if you got 3 mil of clearance, you got 3 mil of clearance. The tire could flex and move as you travel, but I think just a little bit of bending there will serve to open that up, and that'll be quite fine. So I'll just pan back one more good look at the Juke with the 40 mil lift from Tema 4x4. Before I crack into these adjustments, looking at that front panel, perhaps bending up that plate underneath the McPherson strut spring, and then adding that spacer washer to the rear shock absorber. All right, let's get to work. So here we are with the front tire off now, and we can see pretty clearly where the scuffing is as a result of steering clearance problems. And on the back, we've got the same a bit here and up in here. It doesn't look like we've got anything any higher up. And look at the bottom of that plate, it's untouched as well. So that's not too bad. That plate can get bent up just a little bit. I think the way I'll do that is when the tire is back on, I'll just use a pry bar over the top of the tire. I'm only really trying to achieve about 5 millimeters clearance between the tire and that plate, because again, this is fixed to here. This is the part that moves. So if you got 5 mil clearance here, you got 5 mil clearance, and then it's only subject to some fluctuation from the tire itself, maybe flexing under load or different pressures. So I'll take a look at how well a heat gun can possibly reshape this. I'm also noticing it's so movable. I've never had a car that was snapped together before. This thing's like it's like a snapped together model, it seems. These blind plastic clip rivets are just used everywhere on this thing, and they've all got so much variability around the placement of the panel as a result of the sizes of the holes. The pin itself goes into an 8 millimeter hole where it secures, so I'm assuming it must mean there's about a 9 millimeter hole in these panels, so lots of wiggle room there. And I'm just wondering if maybe those mounting holes for those pins can't be re-drilled, or some other form of relocating, so that we get the clearance, and get that clearance perhaps without even having to do anything down here. Alright, that's the update for the moment. I'll get back to it. Right now, I've removed those pins, so this is completely loose and can move forward. If we come up to look at the original holes, this can move forward a good 10 millimeters from where the original hole is. So I don't know if I want to be drilling into that steel that is part of the structural member of the vehicle. Okay, so after all that messing around under the fender well, removing those push pin rivets, I've put the tire back on just so we can see again how much clearance. And I have an assistant who's going to give a pull on that front panel now while I hold the camera here. Go ahead and pull on that, please. We're doubling the gap. Push it back down, please. All right, let go. All right, so that's where it's resting. And now if he pulls on it, pull it right, we're gaining at least 10 millimeters of clearance with this adjustment. So I think I'm onto something here. I'm not quite sure how well I'm going to be able to secure everything. I have decided I can't drill into the steel under the fender well, because that would be getting into the structure and take it to the car, and I probably wouldn't get certified next time it went in for a check, which we have to do once a year here. So I'll be on to trying to brainstorm some solutions for mounting this panel forward from its current position, and I'll be back to you. Okay, so I am back up from my workshop where I have been fabricating these little tabs. These are to go underneath the valance, and it's going to push that valance out by 25 millimeters. You'll notice one end is a bit offset from the other. This end with the larger space goes against the factory bracket that's in the vehicle, and then the shorter end is where the 8 millimeter push pin will engage. That's just about enough space there to accommodate the natural contour in the valance. So I'm going to get under here, put these in. And that's 25 millimeters between those holes, and that's based on measurements I've taken under there, and actually being a little bit conservative. So I think that's quite achievable, a 25 mil move forward in the valance, which brings that whole bumper assembly forward. I'm going to get under there now and do it, and we'll see what the result is at the fender well when it's complete. Well, here we are now with the spacers installed underneath that front valance, and we can see quite a difference in that fender well opening on the front. If I move in here close enough to get my hand in, there we go, I can put my hand in. And you might recall before I could barely get my fingertips in there. So I would suggest we've gained at least a centimeter of clearance in front of that tire. I have moved it forward and backward a few times, just repositioning it, and I'm noticing less scrubbing in the fender well, although I'm not implying that this is good. This is all still very loose in here, so that's the next step, is to get this thing jacked up and then address the positioning and figuring out a way to re-secure the fender wells on both sides. But I'm really happy with this. The amount of clearance has improved dramatically, so I think the interference from the fender lip itself is now a thing of the past. It's just going to be a matter of dealing with that fender well. So I'll get this thing jacked back up and have a look under there and come back with some more footage on what I do to get the fender well positioned properly. And I'll also get under and show you those tabs in position and how they were finally secured. So now with the car lifted on jack stands, we can see under this front valance the metal tab. It was placed with an 8mm bolt and then secured with the plastic rivet, I guess you want to call it, the push pin, whatever it's called. Very tight under here, so I'll apologize in advance if focus is an issue. But you can see the three of them are enough to move this valance forward down, at this point, 25mm forward, which that translates, as we've seen, to about a centimeter or 15mm of additional space between the fender well and the tire. Hey, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for the day today. I'm pretty happy with the result that I've gotten out of just a couple hours, kind of scratching my head, figuring out what to do, and then fabricating those little brackets down in the workshop. I mean, if you look over my shoulder here, you can see that we've got the clearance on the front side of those tires that we needed, so I'm pretty darn happy with that for the amount of time that was invested in it. A very good payoff. All right, so wrapping up on that for today, and I will be back into it tomorrow with the heat gun when I've got a little more time. I'd kind of like to go start to finish on that one because I think once I get into it, I'm going to get a bit obsessed probably with trying to get them done. So better not to do it today when I'm going to run out of day. I'll be back tomorrow to do that one. All right, thanks for watching.